Hello, welcome back to The Honest Edit. In today's episode, we have a wonderful and amazing guest with us here today. He is the founder of Tharros Coaching. His name is Bryant, and he has an incredible backstory of resilience and triumphs and pivoting, I think is a good word after hearing your story a little bit. And so I'm delighted to meet you. We've already been having many conversations before even hitting record. So
as we do it here.
Yes.
On our very professional podcast. But thank you guys for joining us today. I'm super excited for Bryant to be here because, one, he's one of my favorite people. I met his wife while she was teaching a yoga class and literally went up to her and I was like, I'm pretty sure we have to be friends now. And I started going to her classes and then I finally asked her out on her friend day and we've been besties ever since. I was like, I need you in my life. You are now a part of my team.
Gosh, that sounds so familiar.
Yeah, right?
I may have said those same words.
Yeah.
May have said the same words.
That's kind of how we started our
That's how we met.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're stuck with me now. Yay.
Yeah.
Together. We're bound. Sorry. Yeah.
And Melissa and I's friendship is one of those of true authenticity and just no hold back, women emotions. We're both moms. And so Bryant just came in the fold with that. And then I got to meet him as a father and a business owner. He's actually one of my virtual assistant clients for his day job. But what we're here today to talk about is how Bryant has put together this coaching program that supports dads navigating through their identity and mental health and the work-life balance and coming from an authentic place through honesty in the heart and being vulnerable and all of the real stuff. And so I have seen you go through some shit and have some really great successes over the past couple of years. So, yeah, we're really excited for you to be here and to help give our listeners a little guidance and perspective.
Sure.
And I somewhat heard of your background, and I think for our listeners and for myself, I would love to hear it from you. Just kind of in short, your story of what led you up to this point of being a coach.
Okay. Yeah. So, many people at the turn of the century, as I like to joke, I had no idea what the hell I was going to do with myself. I went off to college for 1 year, and with a 0.73 GPA came back with one best friend who married a good friend of mine from high school, and that grateful for that, but it was a very expensive friend to make. And when I came home, I tried a few times in community college and, really couldn't find a path the traditional way. I found that if I was interested in something, I had no problem going to class and asking questions and being a part of the conversation. But if it was something that I wasn't interested in, I would sleep through it, miss a couple classes. Then I'd feel ashamed and couldn't show back. I couldn't show my face again. The teacher's going to look at me weird, or the students. And that was a self-fulfilling prophecy and a repeated pattern from the early part of from 2000s really to 2005. And in 2005, I had an incredible experience where a friend of mine, Michael Kervin, who was managing a band at the time, asked if I wanted to help lug some stuff around and sing in between some sets. And the reason why he asked was because the first time I'd ever gone to see one of the bands that he managed, they actually pulled me up on stage and I sang a Metallica song, nice. Mama Said, which is like a country song from Load. And I did it a cappella, and I was frightened and scared, but I knew I could seize this moment. And for almost a couple years, the band would always bring me up to sing, and then always have me sing at the end where they had kind of like a communal song. And so when they asked me to come with them and to just hang out and do a mini tour, I jumped on it. And I also found another reason not to go back to school, even though I was enrolled at the time. And so, when I came home from that, I was like, I got to start a fucking band.
Yeah.
I do. And I'd already had friends that I played disc golf with, and for what you will about, the type of friends you have when you play disc golf and you're in your early 20s. But yeah, a lot of good times, but also noticing that I was around people who were intelligent and creative, and we all shared a love of music. I was equally one of the less proficient and less experienced people in the band, but I found my voice as a kind of singer and a karaoke person. And from that, we started a band. And because my friend Michael moved to Dallas around the same time after losing his father, and wanted to start his business, take the business that he had started in Austin, he used us as kind of a pilot group with some of the other bands I was listing. So we would go in and play places that no one would play ever. And we would go in and we'd set up shop, and we ended up playing close to 350 shows in about 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
we got
a lot.
a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And, some of the highlights from that experience was like selling out playing in front of a sold out crowd, albeit was, SMU frat party, but playing at the Granada Theater here in town, the iconic playing there, packed to the hilt. We were the headliners. That just a tremendous experience. And through that experience, I met my wife, who we were talking about. And just like you, she swept me off my feet. She gave so much shit to my bandmates as if she was in the band. But with her, and I tell this experience because it was it's so profound. I was playing music with the idea that I was born to do this. This is the thing I remember when I was in 4th grade. This is what I wanted to be. I want to be a rock star. But when I met Melissa, I remembered that way before that, I wanted to be a dad, and I wanted to be in love. Right. And so it quickly shifted, and I don't want to make allusions to the Beatles because we were nowhere near it. And nor do I want my wife to ever be considered Yoko. But what happened is I began to start changing very deliberately towards, okay, this is the relationship. This is beyond friends with no benefits, which would kind of felt like with the band, like I was dating them. We were always together. We were always in hotel rooms or sleeping on the floor in venues and other things like that. But here was something that, here was someone that I felt was my soul's recognition of my counterpart. I use that term because that's actually from Wedding Crashers.
Yeah.
And that's what love is. And with her, we've been together. What is going to be wild is it will be 19 years around when we started dating. 18 years. 18 years, and we'll celebrate our 16th wedding anniversary in August. And, she provoked in me something that I knew I wanted and knew I was capable of. And then from that, ironically, within the first month of us dating within the first week of me texting her, I got a day job. And I knew that it was going to be a significant moment when I texted her at 9:15 in the morning, because we had hung out at the bars, right? And she literally said, like, "What are you doing up?" I was like, "I've got a job. I got this job, you know?"
So you felt like you needed to show up for her in a way of being maybe like a provider.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And what was, to use that phrase of, she was making me a man. That's really what it came from. And quick sidebar too. I'm a father of two girls, two incredible women, young women. And, the one gift I want to give to them, or want them to understand about men, is that that's their job, is to provoke that transition into maturity. And it's with that power that they have to guard it. Right. And that has to do with them being the matron, them being being the bride, being the mother, and then later the matriarch. And with that power throughout history, that's what men men were trying to do. They were trying to increase their status. They were trying to do what they could so that they could win that woman's heart and win their way into their role. I wasn't this introspective, at the time. But I recognized in myself that. And so I got a graphic design job. I started seeing myself as a career guy. When we got married, on our honeymoon, I'm sitting there jazzing myself up. We're sitting in a pool in Cozumel. Just it's incredible experience. And all I can think about is how I'm going to go back to that job and ask for a raise and ask for a promotion. Because God damn it, this is what I'm married now. I need to be doing more. I got the promotion. I became an art director. And then, without telling Melissa, I quit that job over, about a year later. I'd say without telling her. I told her right after. I said, I quit the job. I have no plan, no big, whatever.
So what was the shift in that? Because it's like you had this purpose, you had these goals, you were definitely achieving the success within that. But then did you crash and burn? Did you sort of change?
I recognized, going back to my college experience, I recognized that I need to be interested in something. And if things become mundane, it takes a lot of mental energy, a lot of RAM for me to find what's interesting and make that fun. And this became kind of a theme throughout my marketing career. I left that and went into oil and gas and was still doing marketing and felt like, okay, I was chasing money when I went into oil and gas. And,
as
it happens. And, it was, I thought, okay, here I am. I'm still working to try the provider. By the way, my wife is trained as a pediatric physical therapist. So here I am with no degree, making $10 an hour when I met her. She is a professional with a license she was busting her ass with 4 10-hour days and had Friday off, but I saw her as the provider. And, I felt this need to just at least be able to have some sort of reciprocity in there. I also never thought I'd ever get to the point where I'd be making as much as someone with a master's degree like her, let alone eventually having to be hiring master's degrees, MBAs when I was at my last corporate job. And so it was this theme of interest, this theme of just trying to find myself in what was given to me as my professional identity, because I didn't have a traditional path. Then after that, I went back into the corporate life, by no coincidence in the same 6 months before our first kid was born. Melissa was like, we got to think about benefits. We got to think about stability. And I know what that means, that we've got to think about it. You've got to think about it. And so I took a job, an entry-level job. And 2 years later, as things happen, I became the boss. 2.5 years later, I became the boss. And that was my first executive job in software. I left there to find more interesting things, and it was a perfect time. It was about 2016. And in the area, that was the first time that the local universities were having kids graduate with digital marketing degrees. So I found myself having something that other people did not have. I had the experience, I had the XP. And then I was like, okay, well, I started to understand that I was the right person at the right time for this, because they needed to hire people to be the bosses of these really smart kids. And so I left that company and was able to work at another software company, but I was running the campaigns for their users. And so I ended up in boardrooms and on conversations with people with more degrees than a thermometer, telling them that they were wrong. They were doing this wrong. And I was working with brands like Ace Hardware, Bed Bath & Beyond, Steinmart. Me as the tattooed, sight-burned college dropout schmuck, telling them what they were doing wrong. And an opportunity came to work with a local company here that was formerly the Yellow Pages. They were working really hard to transition to digital.
Yeah.
And so, thankfully, my former boss saw in me the disruptor that they needed, right? You think about the yellow pages. We joked. There were joking. I wouldn't say we as like collectively the company, but there was joking about like, the yellow pages. Our new tagline is here. You recycle this for us, right? Like here, put your baby's butt on this.
Yeah.
And, but we were protected from the types of budget constraints within like the VC world. The whole company was behind us. The whole company was behind me to kind of create this. And, I went from five employees to 25 directly underneath me.
Wow.
We grew the inbound offering and then later transformed the company to where we were able to go public in October of 2020. And I thought, wow, I've made it.
You've
right.
made
This is my identity. Well, I'm this leader. I can't
But did
effing
you
believe
think at any point, because you've kind of tossed back and forth from having that mindset of, oh, well, my wife is the established person and she's kind of the provider and she has these degrees and these kids went and they have all these degrees. And do you ever feel like even though you're leading these individuals and you're really scaling this company and making strides and waves and being that disruptor, that you have like an imposter syndrome?
Oh, I love the imposter syndrome. Absolutely. I studied it in depth. And interestingly enough, imposter syndrome was something that people believed only women had when they entered the workforce. Right. And it was a decade and a half later. They're like, maybe dudes have this too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dudes have these feelings too. And it's kind we continue to relearn that over and over again, but absolutely. And it was my performance aspect from playing and being drawn to getting up on stage, closing my eyes and singing and playing guitar. I knew that I had this. It is a gift. It was a gift that not from a talent level, but the gift of a performative aspect that I knew I needed to embody it before I could actually be it. Like the feeling of confidence comes after acting confident.
Yes.
Right.
Having that identity first.
Right.
Sitting in that state of being.
Right.
Yeah.
And feeling it integrated all the way through every neurological.
It's almost kind of like living in Delulu land a little bit.
Right.
Right. Gotta be a little delusional.
Well, and it's,
to make it happen.
It is. Well, and you say make it happen. That's the essence and the beauty of the fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
That's it. How do you do it? How do you learn to walk? You fake it. You fall continuously. You
Starts in
try.
your imagination.
Yeah. Like I can do that. Bam. And how many, that's with a kid walking. We do that every day. We do that in our conversations when we talk to our partners, when we talk to our clients, when we do that, like everything is about that, that leaning forward instead of backward aspect. And so, I absolutely had that. And I continually have that. I'm learning now to channel that, to understand that energy is the same that Tiger Woods uses as his flow state. That's how I recognize it. It's like, oh my God, I'm nervous. Okay. That means I got to take that energy to stay focused and to stay in the present.
And it's also a way to recognize that you care. You care about something. You care about this.
Yeah. Because I hadn't necessarily been able to disconnect or apply the emotional language towards that nervousness. But yeah, it is caring. And that becomes pathological because you care so much. Oh my God, what if I fail? What if they know I'm fake? What if they know I'm faking it? One of the things that I loved, and this started to contribute to my transition towards coaching, was I was hiring MBAs or people that were seeking their MBAs. And the first thing I would do is tell them, like, hey, there's two things that I'm going to teach you. One is that we're all full of shit and none of us wrote the book. We're barely a chapter ahead.
Yeah.
Maybe a sentence ahead, right?
Yeah.
You tell a 25-year-old that, they're like, huh? And then hopefully they get it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, I was like, if you're able to, make sure you go to your 10-year reunion in a couple years. Why? Because all the people you were comparing yourself to over the last decade are either fat or bald or making it or not, this, that, and the other. And it resets everything, right?
Yeah, perspective.
It resets everything. If you're in that place. Now, I know a lot of people have excess baggage, trauma, or they just didn't like the people that they grew up with. And so I don't recommend that with everybody, but if you've got the guts, if you've got the courage to just go in and level set, and you see the high school quarterback did not marry the cheerleader, and then he's, bald and running an insurance agency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, then I feel all right. Or if you see the high school quarterback and the cheerleader, or the prom queen and the prom queen. Did I get them both? King and queen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or however that works these days. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you get to see that, it reinforces that, oh my God, we are all still children acting like adults.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I started to realize, like, this is where my true value is. And that was what was also, when I was growing the team, that was what drove me to be most interested. And so January of 2022, we're coming out of COVID. I get COVID for the first time on my 40th birthday. I'm supposed to be in the office for the first time, where they brought all the people all of the people on my direct reports into the office to meet for the first time. Big strategy session. I had to do it virtually. And I'm like, oh God.
While having COVID.
Yeah, while having COVID.
Yeah.
And, the impact of turning 40 started to really, really, really rattle something in my head that I'm like, well, what if I don't like what I'm doing? Because I already consider I didn't like the position I was in. I felt like I needed more, and just that kind of thing. And
that feeling that you had several years back, where you're like, well, am I really interested in doing this? Or is this like,
that's exactly,
do I really want to do this, or am I just doing this to pay the bills?
Right. And so because of this experience at Thrive, I became the provider. And my wife, Melissa, she first went part-time, and then started doing contract work. And then while she was doing contract work, we had an experience. I don't want to call it a scare, but there was a time when she was late, and we were like, okay, we were preparing. We're like, okay, we could do this. And at the time, Lillian was about 6, right? And we had already committed in those 6 years that we were going to just maybe have the one. And then Melissa's period came, and we were both disappointed, and we had to we started the conversation.
Yeah. And
then during 2000, we started trying. And in the summer of 2000, we had a mid-pregnancy loss that devastated us. This story is one that I tell, I freely tell all the time, because it's so important. So important, specifically for men, to understand the impact on the woman in this case. When my language was changed from miscarriage to pregnancy loss, I understood what the stigma was, and the unfair, disproportionate, what do I want to look at? This is basically the fact that it was all placed on the woman. And it also just ignored the impact of the male, because it was devastating.
Right.
This was a male child. This was the only male in my family bloodline that would have carried on the name.
Right.
And just to see the suffering and the grief of a woman that I saw courageously provide our first child together, and to share that and to have to sit with it. But also, at that moment, COVID ended for us. It was in the height of COVID. This was June of 2020. And why did it end for us? Because in our household, with the world on its way down, on the way to its end, as it seemed like, in our household, the world, it was done. But as we sat in the dark, grieving in our house, every time the door would open, the sunlight would come in. We'd have family and friends that were wearing masks and other stuff. And as they would come in, they'd take the mask off and give us food and hug. And they themselves, whether they were showing it or not, they were saying, I too believe that this is more important than everything else in the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, through that experience, that continued to kind of work its way towards me going, there has to be something more. There has to be. And that really strengthened Melissa and I's relationship. We had done therapy and things like that in the past, so we had a good supportive structure and a lot of self-development, both inside and outside of our relationship, but nothing to prepare like this, right? Like, fuck's sakes.
And when Melissa
doesn't.
When I was going over and checking on y'all, and she was telling me the ways that you were showing up for her and the things that you were doing, I was completely blown away, because it's not usually a role that men or fathers take. And like, you're right that it's, it's all on the woman, but we don't really stop as a society and like, well, the dad lost something too.
Right.
And take a moment. And then I just remember being profoundly grateful for my friend that she had a partner that was doing these things and sitting with her and feeling the fucking feelings.
Yeah.
Not just being like, here's a casserole, bye, I'm going to go to work, or how are you today? But really showing up in a very raw and authentic way.
Right.
And I remember us having like a really deep conversation about this, and she shared some things, and I was just like, I can only hope that like other women feel that cared for and that loved and that supported during, something as tragic as this.
Mm-hmm.
And
which every woman should.
Yes.
And one thing I really want to impress upon either just everyone in the audience is, that's what the woman is supposed to do, is be able to provoke within the man his ability to be there, right? Mm-hmm. And there should be an expectation of that. There should be a conversation, a negotiation. Hey, I need you here. Yeah. I need you here. And the man has to understand too, like, okay, I did this to you, I am a part of this. I have to be present. And as I continue to go from sidebar to sidebar to sidebar, I was blessed with, speaking of the Granada Theater here in town, another plug, Mike, there was a brilliant man who worked there. He's now passed away about 7 or 8 years ago. I hope I got that right, but he was the photographer and he was much older than all the guys. I started working there after I was playing music there. And he was a photographer, much older. He's my parents' age. Actually went to the same high school as my parents, Woodrow Wilson. There's a nice plug for DISD there. And he had this, warm, avuncular, parental yet boisterous attitude. And he was there taking pictures because he loved it. And he took all the iconic pictures of the first decade and almost decade and a half of the Granada Theater. And he told me, now, not everybody was married. In fact, most weren't. And no one was going to be pregnant. No one was having kids. This was with our first kid. And he said, you think you love your wife now? Wait until you see what she does for you. Oh, and I'm like, I have no idea what that means, but he told, and then we decided not to find out what gender Lillian was. You find out eventually, and then that might change. I also joked, I don't know, we haven't decided yet. You having a boy or a girl? We haven't decided yet. Now we know, it may not be as sensitive as it can be today, but he also then said, you think you love your wife? Wait till you have a daughter. And he didn't know I had a daughter. I was going to have a daughter. And I understood those two comments as being like, he's telling me the same thing because he had a daughter.
Right.
And because of that, when I had the frame of reference for when we had the pregnancy loss of knowing what I knew what Melissa was capable of. As we were talking about, just her ability to sweep people off her feet and just to attract amazing people because she's so real. She's so funny and so just nurturing. Smart, nurturing. Yeah. Absolutely. And you could tell you're cared for by her. And, to go through that experience with her, probably why I was so connected with her, because I knew, and there's so many things that I didn't know, especially about a mid-pregnancy loss.
Yeah.
Both of what has to happen.
Yeah.
After that. And I was a part of that. And then of course we were part of the grieving, and it took a long time. And what was interesting too, that we found, is that there were so many people that were so afraid of talking about how we feel, in fear of trying to bring it up. And we were totally opposite. Like, we want you to ask how we're doing. Yeah. We want you to know how we're doing. And if weeks are gonna go by and you're our family and you haven't said anything, like
sure.
that's rough.
Yeah.
I think that's where we get caught up in this like stigma, is we don't talk about it. We're afraid to not be authentic or not be like true. And you guys know me, I have no filter for anybody. And I'll go up and get in your business and ask you, do you want to talk about your feelings? But also like, let's talk about your feelings. And I think that's what during all of that was so transformational for me, because I saw you and Melissa being so open, and even Lillian, I mean, talking about what happened, talking about our feelings. And we don't do that a lot. So we're afraid to approach it. And then you have people, everybody in the world is going through something. Everybody is dealing with something. And you know, it's like somebody cuts you off on the road, and instead of being like, fuck you, be like, you know what? That person has somewhere to be. That person is going through something. Give them grace and give them space. And so I think about that often when I see things happen, and especially like showing up for friends and even clients that have gone through losses and that are grieving and they're trying to get their house in order just so they can fucking get up and go to work in the morning. And so I just want to acknowledge that there is something to be said for having those people around and talking about your experiences, because it makes us all human. We're all just trying to human here, right?
Well, I think it's also one thing that I love about you, and what I'm learning is that you ask yourself questions. And a lot of people, they might people please or cater to others and show up for others, more so than they would ever show up for themselves. And so having even those questions, am I fulfilled in this? Yes, I'm successful, but gosh, am I happy doing this? And having that sort of inner dialogue to really identify, am I showing up for myself too? Because then you can give more to other people when you show up for yourself, and you're kind of like refilling your cup. Then you can
pour it out.
You can pour it to someone else.
Right. And so just to continue my brief answer to number one here. We make our way through the close time after, through our deepest grieving, and Melissa and I say, well, do we want to do this again? Do we want to risk doing this again? And luckily, Melissa and I, being the fertile people we are, we didn't have the issues, and I recognized too that, having some very close relationships with people who were at the time dealing with fertility problems and dealing with the heartbreak of all that, and had seen both the positive outcomes and negative outcomes of that. We recognized the blessing of this, right? And so Melissa is pregnant again at the end of 2020. And, we waited long enough. We waited long for the doctor. We did all that. And we could talk about that. But that we can get into how we helped each other heal physically too. Which required loving touch and massaging and working through things to help her body heal, because we had both decided that this was what we wanted. Right. And what we didn't know what we were going to accept is the challenge that in June of 21, we had our second daughter. And she was born, Melissa's pregnancy, her pregnancy story was the inverse. She had a long pregnancy story in the hospital, for Lillian, and then a very quick delivery. I'd say pregnancy, but I'm talking about the birth story, a very quick delivery to this beautiful, tiny 5-pound, but healthy baby. And tiny. And what we didn't know was that this was actually part of a genetic disorder that she has. And, which is called Warsaw breakage syndrome. We later found that out, but we thought, okay, this is just a tiny kid. I'm a big guy, but Melissa's tiny. So this happens. And, Melissa's working her way through some feeding challenges, which again, my God, gentlemen, recognize that women are created for this. If we were doing this by accident for thousands of years, we've perfected it to where women are designed to do this. Not all women are designed to do it. Not all women are designed to be great mothers. Not all women have that intent. And thankfully we're empowered enough as a society to allow that to be a choice in most instances. But, she knew that she needed to nurture this child. And so she was going through quite a bit, just trying to get Isla, her name's Isla, getting her to latch, getting her to feed. And we're thinking, okay, this is pretty touch and go. And then, okay, we find out she's got tongue ties and a cheek tie. Okay, we're going to get that addressed. And we go into the dentist or the oral surgeons that are going to perform this. And they recommended body work on both Melissa and the baby to help them both kind of heal from this. Yeah. And during that, we find out, we get we get recommended to another pediatric specialist, and we find out that she has microcephaly, which means that her head size is smaller than even on the chart. Now, Melissa, who's worked in pediatric physical therapy, is now thinking of all the worst case scenarios, right? And my dumbass starts Googling it and seeing things from Brazil, from the Zika virus, seeing all this stuff. And I'm terrified. And then the question comes, have you all done an audiology test? Yeah. We're like, no. But we don't know why they didn't do it in the checkup. And so we go in and we find that Isla is profoundly deaf. And my God, was that just a shock? Yeah. What is interesting about, I now with the almost 4-year-old, I'm all in on the deaf community. I can go hours at a time talking about that. I've learned sign language and continue to learn sign language, to give her that access to language. But, the interesting fact about that is that majority, I think it's something like 80% of people with deaf children, that's the first deaf person they know. Yeah. Wow. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Yep. And so here was another significant challenge. And I was navigating through this with Melissa, but definitely on my own, trying to figure out, oh my gosh, first the loss, then this. And something hit me. I'll call it divine. I'll call it, spirit, the creator, God, whatever it is. It's the thing that which is out of your control, but always seems to have a benevolent influence, right? I'll just stick it as that as a definition. And, I'm standing there in the bedroom that we had just been locked into, to make sure the feeding was done. And I'm holding Isla there, and I just look at her as my child. I was like, there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing fucking wrong with you. Yeah. And at that moment, I was connected. Now, another sidebar real quick. It takes men about 9 months to get connected to a child. It's pretty scientific. It's the extra gestational period. And why is that? Well, there's two things. One, one, look at what this baby did to your wife's body, right? Look what it did. Now, honor that because she just went through that for you and that child.
Say it again,
Right,
brother.
right. She just went, well, and here also look at where this child is always placed, you know,
Right.
and not to get into deep Oedipal stuff, but like now that kid is now went from parasite on the inside to parasite on the outside. There's a lot of reasons why men are genetically predisposed to be cautious.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't get too far into it, but it stems from us being from chimps. It stems from us being cave and societal and men's roles traditionally of going off and dying and one male having to come back. And that's why women's cycles are all in there, right? That when we were all in a cave and 5 men went out, one man came back at 5, all 5 women had to be ready, and that's where that came from. So men are genetically predisposed to be cautious, I would say, in the identity of the baby. However, this is a wives' tale, but I think it's true is that the baby often favors the father when the baby is born. I think it's the fact that the baby is fat, naked, and bald might have a lot to do with it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that there is something in that so that you can recognize it. So it takes about 9 months where that kid has a personality, where that kid's eyes and recognize you as fucking dad, you as the father. I know who you are. You know, the baby, she knows that the moment she comes out with her mom, you know, because she's felt her emotions. She's taken in all of the hormones, all of the good, all of the bad. And she knows her voice. She knows everything. But with dad, it's a little different. But luckily for that, at that moment, she was 7 weeks old. I was like, this is my kid. This is it. And, you know, that also became this kind of jarring, purposeful, somatic moment of like, oh my God, this is going to be my life. This is it. What I later attribute to that moment too was recognizing like, I don't have a script anymore. I can't compare myself to anyone. I can't. Where am I going to go find a family that's got a precocious, neurodivergent daughter like Lillian, who I absolutely love. She resembles me in so many ways, and then a profoundly deaf and precocious and fun-loving child. Like there's no book, there's no story, there's no archetypes. I can't go into ancient history and look at this. I can't look at movies or try and find a script for it.
Which is where you usually go to find them. You go and educate yourself and do the research to figure out the things and how to do the day job and all the things. And there was no playbook.
No. Yeah. And that's important. It's important to realize both the impact of stories and then impact of your story. And this is, and so.
Do you think that was like the pivotal moment where you felt like I can speak to inspire other dads, or I can be that person that shows up to help others understand?
I started to suspect it.
Yeah.
I started to suspect like, because people were starting to pat me on the back on like, you guys are going through this. I can't believe you're doing so well. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot more to how I'm showing up.
Right. It's a choice.
It is. And that's it. And that's it. And so, this is June of 21. 6 months later, I'm stuck with COVID and I'm like, oh my God, I think I need to get another job. And in my mind, I got to make a progression. I've got to move to VP. I got to find my way. I've got to get promoted. I've got to do all this. And then, thankfully, the company would pay for education, continuing education. I went back and forth with them all the time about like, hey, y'all could send me back to school and maybe I'll get that degree. Cause I had a lot of shame about not having a degree, and it was even driven more by that imposter syndrome. Right. And it'll always come down to like, okay, yes, here are the terms. You have to stay with us this long, and you have to study in these courses. I'm like, I'm not fucking taking English 1301 again. If I'm going to go back to college, I'm going to do philosophy, history, and rock and roll. Even though I majored in rock and roll in college later, but like. I wanted it to be controlled because I knew I had the maturity to show up every day that I didn't have when I was a college student. But they wouldn't let me do it, but they would let me sign up for executive programs. And so I signed up for a virtual program in November of 21 at the Haas School of Business, which is what they call the greatest public business school next to Harvard, which is not public. And I was really excited that they accepted me into the program, into this executive education program. And I felt like, okay, wow, if I can start to learn this, I can start and find my place. I get some education, get some credentials, and network within a bunch of individuals of academics with this opportunity, which is really what I actually wanted. I wanted to just have conversations with people that were smart, because I recognized early, I'm like, hey, sit with the smart kids and you'll get smarter. And then I was introduced during the first program, I was introduced into executive coaching and the experience of that. And we were able to do a short bit of it and go through it and how we could coach, our employees. And coaching, there's different definitions within coaching. Their definition of coaching was more from the International Federation of Coaches, which is a pretty strict guideline, but it's also something that I think a lot of coaches actually adhere to, right? It's the fact that coaching is not counseling, not therapy, and it's invoking the answers from the other person as a reflection, right? And for me, it's like, oh my God, I have to sit here and listen and repeat back to people what they're saying and then let them digest it. Like, this is going to be hard. For one, if y'all can't tell, I talk a lot and I have a lot to say, but it's not always organized. But two, when I had the chance to do that, it reminded me of things like yoga or martial arts or meditation or listening to great music or things that just put you in the now. And for me to do that really well, I had to reflect back to that person that they were the only one that matters. And so I got my introduction to that. And then after the COVID incident, I enroll in person. It was the first week that UC Berkeley let anyone back on campus. And I go and I fly to California and I have this tremendous experience. And it's about authentic leadership. Nice. It's about, and I was there. I showed up. My hair had kind of grown out and I didn't look like everyone else in the room. And I was kind of showing off that I was so different. And then, throughout that whole experience, I was open and raw, emotive, and interestingly enough, quite a few people thought I was a plant. They were like, you work for these guys because you're just really into this. Like, you really get it. But
at first I thought you meant like an actual plant.
Well, no. Well,
did they?
Yeah. Right. No, they did. They did. And they had the prune. But no, yeah, they thought I was like someone on the inside.
Yeah, got it.
Because I was just like in it. I was raising my hand for everything. I wanted to go first, and it was requiring a lot of it.
Yeah.
Oh, and I knew it.
Yeah.
And I knew it. And throughout that experience, like I'm like reaching for connections and saying like, hey, I need y'all to tell me what's next for me because I don't want to go back to my job. That was one of those moments. Yet I sit through, there's change in leadership. And then roughly 6 months later, about 8 months later, near Lillian's birthday, Melissa says, hey, I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to talk to someone. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, you and Lily's relationship, it's terrible. It sucks. And I'm like, what? Come on. We're just combative, argumentative. Like, oh, there's no joy. Like, what's wrong with it? I'm a dad, And so I take
this wonderful woman is like, cut the shit.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. What really was is that she was doing her own work, working with an integrative coach, Lavinia Brown. I'll give her a shout out because she was doing this really, really intense work on trying to heal her own wounds, independent of the work that we had done. And she just said, hey, why, her husband, Andrew Lynn, he does this, but he does it for dads. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And I meet with him and I'm just blown away with the experience because it's deeply introspective and it's all about feeling your feelings and understanding this. And at this point, I was like only woo. I didn't go full woo until after this, right? And I started to feel this in after 3 sessions, I get laid off. I get laid off, even though I was kind of looking for jobs. News flash for anyone that gives a shit. I was looking for another job. I had new leadership. I knew that I just knew that things were changing. The sea changed. And I get laid off.
Do you feel like maybe that was the blessing in disguise?
Undoubtedly, because
it's almost like you're aligning.
Yeah, well, and this is what happened was, I had a couple of great interviews. I even had what I thought was an offer on the table, one that would have leveled me up in so many different ways. And because of the work that I was doing, I was only a few sessions in that I recognized I needed to be listening to myself. I was leaving each of these interviews excited, but nauseous, like gross.
Is your body telling you?
My body was telling me something else.
Right.
And after a few weeks of going through that in these interviews, a friend of mine says, for a close friend of mine, who I called the day before I got laid off just to try and reconnect. I tell him, hey, I got laid off. Let's chat. He, through a number of conversations and perhaps wine and whiskey fueled on a Friday night, few texts, he convinces me to start a business on my own. And here's the fun part. When I decided I was going to do it, I walked out the door and I told Melissa, hey, I think I have to start my own business. I do. Now, I didn't start the coaching business just then, but what I did start was Metamorphic Marketing, which was about trying to change business owners in the way that they understood their audience. I just basically taking my language for the last 20 years and trying to provoke that change in the business owners and small businesses. And whether or not I've done a good enough job, if they're ever listen to this, you guys can tell me. But she also
doing a great job.
Right. But what the profound thing that helped inspire the framework for Tharros is she says, I trust you, for one, to hear that and know it's the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially someone like me who has, like everyone else, we have a detailed catalog of all of our transgressions, and we don't give ourselves enough credit because of all that. For her to say that, and then she gives me these rules, these things like, I don't care, I trust you, but we can't change our neighborhood. You got to figure out how to pay the mortgage,
right?
Because I ain't got a job. You got to figure this shit out. I'm taking care of the kids now, which is what I love. Like, to be able to deliver her from her job and to provide, and for me to be off on a path of purpose from that degree.
And
was
like
amazing.
her mother, that was just a real quick side note, for your partner to, and this is for a specific group of folks that want to stay home and mother, for your partner to allow you the time and the space and the funding to stay home and mother and nurture and heal yourself after having children. And because really, they say it takes 2 years. It actually takes 7 years to go fully back to where you were before you had a baby. Science. And to have the support, you've been up, you've been feeding. I mean, Max didn't sleep until he was 4.5 through the night. And I still get to take a nap every once in a while during the day. And my husband doesn't say shit. He supports me. He makes sure I get fed, make sure I have he water and feeds me. And
are you a plant?
I am. and just out there for all of those partners, giving your people, your mothers, the space and the support and energy to do what their body is literally innate telling them to do to take care of these kids, and not having to worry about going out of the house and making money every day, but also the household things. Like, we talk about that a lot in that invisible work. That is huge. So just take that for a moment of thinking about how we can support the family more often.
Right.
Now,
Right.
you had to make the mortgage.
No, so I had to make the mortgage. And why was that important? Well, through COVID, we really connected with our neighborhood. And during that, some of those first people that came and took their mask off to give us food were our neighbors because they saw. They were excited for us during the pregnancy, and then they saw what was going on. So we couldn't move. Second, like, we're not changing Lillian's school, so you're going to have to figure that out too, right? And 3, we can't change grocery stores. Now, this one I thought was like, kind of like, okay, fine. We can shop at the natural grocers. It's not Albertsons, but it's not Whole Foods. It's like, what does that mean? And I later figure out what these particular things meant as far as what we define as our values in our family, which is a big part of the first part of this program. And then the 4th one is you can't be stressed and working all the time like you were in your old job. I kind of changed this because the stress thing has now been different. And I just came back from like a 30-hour work trip to New York. But I recognize what she was talking about is that this, you have to be aware of how this is affecting you when you show up at home. And so those 4 things I later figured out that were some of our family's core values. One is the community and the impact of where we are and who we live around. That is huge. And to know those people and to care about those people because they cared for us. 2, education. We as a family put a priority on developing ourselves. And doing it uniquely and curative. I mean, it's curated. Like we pick what we want to learn. We pick the school our child is in. We pick how what they do, like whether it's, screen time or what they're listening to, watching. We choose that because we know its impact. And ultimately, we want them to have the ability and the desire to be self-learners like Melissa and I are. I wouldn't have been anywhere if I didn't get addicted to self-development, personal development, self-development. Like, I understood, wow, going back to the interest thing, wow, if I could really find the things that I'm interested in, this will fucking be awesome. And so within that became philosophy, history, psychology, neurobiology, evolutionary biology, like all these crazy things that I love and I'm interested in and come into the cocktail that you see before you. And then that 4th one, did I get education? Nope. So the 3rd one is nutrition. It was the fact that we value and understand our bodies and the impact of that if our healthy body will help lead to a healthy mind. Oh, yeah. And I mean, when I met Melissa, I was close to 300 pounds. I'm now 220. And smoking cigarettes and drinking chocolate milk on stage, like weird. But that's what it was. And why did I think that was appropriate? Well, I also been conditioned that if I didn't die by 27 or make it as a rock star, I did it wrong, right? So I felt like this excess was a part of that identity as a rock star. But we had both had radical transformations in our health, thanks to working with functional medicine and working with nutrition. And that was just a really big thing. It's like, we have to make smart choices of what we put in our body and optimize our body. And then that last thing was, you have to find a way to manage the burden of life and shoulder that burden and and more importantly, shoulder that burden with a smirk on your fucking face. Right? Because all major religions and most developmental philosophy is predicated on the fact that life is suffering and life is hard, right? If it was so hard, we wouldn't keep doing it. We wouldn't have babies. We wouldn't make it through. I started to understand that during COVID when it looked like the world was evil or breaking. And one of the things that I recognized too is like, if the world was crumbling, then it would have crumbled. So there has to be an equal counterpart of good.
Right.
There has to be that beauty that still exists in the world.
It's finding that balance.
It is, and it is that balance.
And
so,
but it's also a choice. And it's perspective.
It is. It's all of that. It's all of that. And so therein became the 4 values. that my family had. Now, your family values are different than personal values. And one of the things that we do very early on in the program is that we have the fathers define their own values, because it's these values that you're going to measure every decision against.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And if not, you're going to get sick during interviews, or you're going to hate your boss, your life, your wife, your kids, because there's something within you that you have not defined that you're measuring or every decision against. And when you start to define them, you know the rough edges.
Right.
You know where it is, where it starts, it stops. And you know, truthfully, okay, is this in violation of those values?
Right.